Max, this last and final question is for you. You and Jason and I both have young children who we care for passionately. So, what, if anything, can we do for our children, our grandchildren, that next generation of leaders to help them not define themselves against worldly things?
Such an important question, and I'm just so encouraged by both Jason's last answer and your sharing just now. I think that's just sums it all up beautifully. And so I think it's really about taking the two realizations that you guys have just shared, and really instilling those in the hearts and minds of our children, and of the next generation of leadership. We talk about intergenerational wisdom transfer as if it's like some technocratic transaction that we can just write books about. And if we get the education systems right, and we get the MBA curricula correctly, and we just feed these kids what they need to know, then that'll be enough. Whereas I think we've missed the importance of relational education and moral education, and focused entirely on technocratic education, which isn't completely useless and has its place. But I think we need to teach children that there is objective moral truth. We need to give them objective reference points for their identity and for what's right and what's wrong. And we have to be very careful in elevating and deifying feelings. I think the post-truth culture correctly acknowledges that feelings are important, but just goes way too far, and it says that feelings are all that matter. So I think raising kids who are well balanced, as C.S. Lewis says, we don't want to raise a generation of people without chests, without objective frames of reference, objective reference points through which they can navigate through life. We want to model for us, for Christians like myself and Jason and you, Alana, the love of Jesus, in the lives of our children, to show them that, what matters most about who we are is whose we are, rather than actually what we do. The fact that we belong to God, that they do as well, that they are unconditionally loved, but also that unconditional love is not unconditionally affirming. The Christian model of love protects that which it loves. And so necessarily that requires a rejection of some things, a rejection of what it deems to be damaging and evil and so forth. So I think a rediscovery of absolute truth, a rediscovery of moral education, and ultimately couching all of that in a doubling down on relational education, on teaching our kids about the unique and intrinsic value of all people, regardless of what they believe and who they are and what they achieve. That this Christian message teaches us that we are all made in the image of God. And that's an amazing thing. And, we know our Bible tells us that people aren't just made in the image of God. God literally refers to every single person that he makes as his masterpiece. He calls each of us his masterpiece, and then he calls each of us by name. And if we can get that, I think, into our children, that will give them their rosebud, and they can live in that rosebud every day of their life. It won't be a realization that comes right at the end. It's something that they can have as a means to freedom every single day.
Thank you, Max. I'm just thinking about, what we're teaching our children and what we're teaching that next generation within the context of the boardroom. And I think about the importance of that relational education. How do we relate with one another? And it really does come back to what you just said, Max. Love, right? Love.